Guys, thank you so much for joining me with today's episode. Today I've got the one and only Bhavik Patel. He is a fellow coach, a colleague that I met at a seminar, virtual seminar because of the pandemic back in, I believe it was April or May.
Yeah.
So Bhavik, thank you for joining, man.
Thank you, Andres.
Well, first things first, how many kids do you have? What are their names?
Yeah, so I have two kids. My daughter, who's Kaya, and she's 15 years old, and she will be 16 this April. And my little boy, Kaylin, who's just turned 11. So there's two of them.
Nice. And tell me, what is the happiest moment you have so far? Or let me rephrase that. What's the first happy moment that comes to mind with you with both your kids?
Oh, okay. So my daughter, 100% was the day she was born. So when she was born, we were told by every knowledgeable being in the whole world she was going to be a boy. Okay, so
Mhm.
that all the preamp was, oh, look at the bump, it's sat in a certain way, it's definitely a boy. Oh, look at how they move, it's a boy, it's a boy, it's a boy. We didn't ask, so even at the scans, they asked, you want to know, and we said no, we'll wait till he or
Mhm.
she comes. So all up until that time, it was a boy, and then when she came and ventured herself into this world, um, it turned out it was a girl. And then when it was almost like when the midwife introduced her, and she said, "Oh, so here's your daughter," and I was like, and that was the first inkling. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have a daughter," and it's interesting because at that time when we had her, I didn't realize what had been missing in my life till the moment she arrived. And when she arrived, it was like I understood what was missing and what got fulfilled all in that one moment. So I never saw the void, and I never knew I had a void until I saw that, until she arrived, and that void was immediately filled by her arriving. So it's quite a difficult concept to explain, but that's exactly what happened, and it was just an absolute joyful experience. And it's continued to be, you the ups and downs, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So that was my daughter. And my son, he's been an interesting character his whole life. So when
Mhm.
he arrived within sort of 45 minutes of us getting to the hospital. He just came
Oh
out, and
wow.
he had no time to wait. And the moment we came home, my daughter, she was 4.5 at the time when he came over there, and she kept saying, "Mommy, Daddy, I want a brother or sister. I want a brother or sister. I want a brother or sister." And I'm sure she wished it. We
Mhm.
wished him into the world, and now she'll refuse to say she ever wanted a brother or sister. But now, through their sort of sibling rivalry, they really love each other. But just
Nice.
him, just every moment of both their lives, there's so much joy. Obviously, there's so much pain as well, but there's so much joy, and there's every shade of grey in between the blacks and whites. So to pick out one, I'd struggle. To be fair, I would struggle.
Yeah, I had to change that question. It's like what's the one that just comes to mind?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
well, tell me a little bit more about that void. Like what is it that what was the void that you noticed right then and there that was filled up?
It was. I think for me, it was this sense of being responsible for another life. Up until that point, I'm a middle child, so I have that black sheep middle child syndrome of lack of responsibility. I don't take responsibility for anything. It's
Hmm.
always someone else's fault, and I'm the black sheep. I follow the paths that no one else is following, and I'd lived my life a lot like that. I'd always taken the sort of the road less traveled, and done a lot of things that I wanted to do, without much thought of if you say maybe the fallout or the highs or the lows. It's just let's give it a go and let's see what happens. And then having a child, then it was almost like, oh my gosh, I am now responsible for another life. And there was an immense sense of gratitude, an immense sense of well being that I we brought another life into the world, and now we were responsible for him or her. Well, it was her obviously at that stage, and him at that stage, and
Mhm.
that was a void I never knew I actually had. I almost like just written it off as actually I'm never really going to be responsible for anything because I'm just in the middle, and I can just relinquish that responsibility. And now with a child in the world, you can't do that, and that was the void that was missing, and then that's the void that was filled to say actually I'm ready for this. I am ready to look after someone in that way. So yeah.
It's almost like it sounds like also like you wanted to be a dad, you didn't know it
No, no,
until
no.
that moment. Like, oh wow, like
Yeah,
I wanted
yeah.
this.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you say it like that, you wanted to be a dad. I know, like exactly like you said, I did not know. I did not know at that stage that I wanted to be, or I felt that I could. I never felt, whether I never felt responsible, I never felt worthy. I don't know what it was, but there was some lack that,
Hmm.
that's not for me. So even when we found out that my wife was pregnant, there was never a plan to have, like we were, so how old were we? 29. So I was 29, my wife was 28 when we found out
Hmm.
we were having her. We had no plan to have a child that early. We were thinking sort of mid 30s, sort of late 30s. So when she came
Hmm.
along, it was almost like, wow, we have been thrust upon this blessing quite early, and we had to figure a lot of stuff out within ourselves, both of us, to make this happen. So yeah.
Hmm. It's interesting because like in the conversations that I've had with a lot of men um who became dad, and just hearing their stories, and just the studies that I've done, is like there's a big difference between someone who wants to be a dad and someone who doesn't want to be a dad, or who's not ready to be a dad in that moment. And like when fatherhood is placed upon both of these men, how they show up really affects everything else.
Mm.
It's
Yes.
so crazy. And it's just, it just is what it is.
Mm. Mm. And I guess, even though, I paint quite a positive picture at that early stages, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
I at that stage, we moved house because the area we were living in, we didn't think it was conducive to bring up a child. It was very sort of commuter, very transitionary people. So we said we'll move somewhere where it's a bit more settled. We were thinking of schools at that point, even though very early. We're in an area where there's better schools. We were near my parents who lived, a few streets down from me, and we started making decisions like that. We never made decisions like that before, and then taking that on, and then I had my own business as well, which I still have, and then taking on all that as well as managing all,
Yeah.
um, the new lessons that parenting brings. It I There were certain moments where it was really blissful, but there was a lot of moments when it was tough. um, Tough as in feeling like because of that responsibility, there are now many decisions we need to make which are not just for ourselves, they're medium to long term decisions that's going to affect us all. So there was a lot more gravitas on a lot of the, you know, questions we were answering and the way we were answering them. We probably wouldn't have answered them in that way if it was just me and my wife.
Hmm.
But because now we had a third being that was with us, it was a case of actually we're really going to need to just think about everything we're doing a lot more than just for us, because we, as grown-ups, as adults, we can just deal with our responsibility. If we make a decision and it's not that great, it's fine, it's just two of us, we can figure it out. But as soon as there's a third person or a fourth person involved, then that decision making becomes so much more important, the way we
Hmm.
decide. um, and for me, that was almost like an alien way of thinking because, like I said, my decision make up to that point was very short term. Just do things that you enjoy. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Just do it. And now is a case of actually, we need to think about this before deciding.
I'm very curious about your experience, in the sense that, like, again, you're an entrepreneur. You've run you run businesses,
Mm,
and you've had a very great success. You had the recession as well. So
Yeah,
that was what? That was
yeah,
around the time your kids were probably like four,
yeah,
around the time your second
yeah,
son was born too, right?
yeah. Second son was
And
born. Yes, right.
yeah, so like I'm very curious to know how you feel and or think about like raising kids while also having all these great aspirations and goals. Like I know for me, and just like 2 cents. One, for me, I love the work that I do, and I entrench myself and I love it. But sometimes, like, a strength overextended becomes a weakness. Like sometimes it's like to a detriment to my relationships. Like I remember me just not going on vacations, family vacations, because I'm like I want to be working, and like there's the personal side, or like like I catch myself now much more easily than I did at my youth. Like oh man, like let me spend time with my wife. Like let me hang out with her instead of just reading or just investing so much in my coaching and my studying. Like let me spend time, let me have that balance. I'm curious for you, like how is there a struggle with that balance? And especially again, you had you just had your daughter. It wasn't easy at the beginning. Like where did you find it a challenge to kind of create more balance? Because at the end of the day, you have the same time as everyone else.
Okay. I think the battle, not just you, not just I, but a lot of people will face is the battle of guilt versus sacrifice. Um, so what are we sacrificing okay, so we can say, like you said, let's pick up on the point of whether it be your wife or your partner. You've just got married and you've got a business. You've just
Mhm.
had a child and now you still have a business and you have other responsibilities as well. So the sacrifice of ambition, you still want to progress, you still want to, grow and do all the things, become a better coach, become a better person, become whoever it is. And if you feel that, okay, I need to spend more time at home because I now have a child, at what point do you see a sacrifice? Am I sacrificing my career? Am I sacrificing because I'm now spending time with my child? Or is it guilt? Guilt that actually I should be doing something else, but I'm now working, but I feel guilty that I'm not at home spending time with my child. So it's that fine line of guilt and sacrifice. And for me, that almost talk until probably a couple of years ago, where when I was doing one thing, I always felt the other. So if I was working, I'd always feel guilty that I was at home. And when I was at home, I'd always feel I'm sacrificing things in my business to be here.
Mhm.
And it's a tough one. And I think where I reached the balance, where I reached middle point was many years down the line, which was actually there is so much time. We have so much time to do what we want to do on this planet. And I believe I'm here for a long time, and that's my own intuition. I'm going to be
Mhm.
here for a long time. So therefore, there's so many things that I still have that I'd like to do, but right now they're actually on a back burner until my kids get to an age where they don't need me so much. They don't want to spend time with the old dad anymore. So
Wow.
therefore, I'll have more time to do other things. But right now, I really want to spend more time at home because there's so many times when my kids were born, I never did that. I had two businesses, I had four businesses at that point, and I would be working some days, 8 in the morning till 2 in the morning, right through. And I
Mhm.
never saw, getting up, them going to bed. I missed all that. And now I look back and I think, I understood why I did it. My wife understood why I was doing it. But even she used to call me back all the time and said, you know what, you can't keep doing this. We need you at home as well. It's not like, we understand you're trying to build a foundation for all of us to have a good life. And I get that. But at some point, we need you at home and just to be a dad, to spend time and give your kids the company. And it's only 2 years ago where I stopped working weekends. So I used to work 6 days a week, and it's only 2 weeks ago, 2 years ago, just before COVID, actually,
Mhm.
the year before COVID, so 2019, where I stopped working weekends and I stopped working Wednesdays. So I stopped only doing 4 days. I started doing only 4 days because I saw that actually they're going to be gone. They're going to grow up so quick and they're going to be gone. And then what? I'm going to then look back and say, I'm so glad that I built this business or built it this way. For what? You know? And that's what made me realize actually that whole element of we believe there's a scarcity in time, where we believe that everything has to
Mm,
be done now. We live in an instant gratification world, everything's so quick, so quick. And I've gone the other side of that to say, actually, no, there's so much more time. So anything I think of today, actually, can I put it on the back burner for another couple of years? I probably can. Let me just do that and let it go. Because it's when it's my time, it will happen. But right now, I just want to enjoy their company.
what you focus on is what you get.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing too is also like it was almost like a transfer of like where's the real scarcity? So again, just like you said, like and even just to add to that, like if you have a career or if you're in like corporate, like the corporate world is like there's competitiveness. If I don't do this at this time or my age or this and that, it's like at the end of the day, where do you want your chips to be? Because like 1 to 5 years old, like that's just never going to come back. But
Hmm.
your opportunity to come back with work or to excel in that is there.
And
And with
and
your
it's
kids,
funny.
it's uh
It's funny you bring up. Sorry to interject there, Andres.
yeah.
It's funny you bring up that age. The first 5 years, because for me now, in hindsight and reflection, they're probably five of the most important years in a child's life. Their development
Mm,
and their foundational way of where they grow their mind and their body, where they feel safe and grounded and whole. That all happens within the first 5 years through safe environment, safe, like family structure, safe, in terms of nutrition, understanding what they eat and how they're surrounded, just constantly being surrounded and being nurtured with love and care and attention. That first 5 years is so so important for the whole life.
mhm,
You look at maybe a lot of adults that maybe go on to have a path which is not ideal, so may end up in a criminal background, etc. And a lot of it can root back from childhood. What happened in a childhood to create that imbalance as people grow up. And that's just tacit knowledge. It's not. I've not looked at any real research into that, but I've seen that a lot. And therefore, my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, actually,
mhm,
when he had his son and his daughter, that first year, so he's corporate, so he's not an entrepreneur. I think he worked in the banking industry, and that first year when they're born, he actually took a year off for both of them. So for his son and his daughter, because he said it was really important to me that I'm there for that first year, so that
mhm.
I can feel that I've spent time with my child. And I still look back and I reflect and I think, I wish I saw that at that time, but at that time, because I had my mind was in a way of actually no, I need to, because I was an entrepreneur, I need to work, I need to business. It's hard for me to take a year off. It would have been possible if I just chose that option, but I didn't. And now looking back, seeing what he did and seeing how he put himself on hold to bring this life to the world, because his son and his daughter didn't ask to be there. They chose to have them, and therefore he chose to shape his life to respect the life that he was bringing into the world. And I really, really admire that whole completely.
I'm curious, like knowing what you know now,
Mm.
like again, hindsight can be a jerk.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, we can look back like, oh, we could have done this and that. It's like, oh,
yeah,
but we can't do anything about it.
yeah,
Let's say like this to me is more like for that dad who's there, but I don't want you to think about him. I want you to think about Bhavik 10 years ago, Bhavik
yeah,
15 years ago.
yeah.
Knowing what you know now, if you can go back and tell him, what would you tell him? Like, not just like encouragement or anything, but like, what is the practical advice that the Bhavik of that time would listen to?
Yeah. So wow, so 15. So that was when I was between 30 and 35 years old. So 30 and 35 was a real, I'd say, that was a real tough time for me because that was when we talked about, the financial crisis happened. I
Mhm.
was already over leveraged in my businesses. Everything slowed down, and it, it impacted me mentally and physically. Really, it's taken the last 8 years of getting out of that. Um, so, what would I have listened to? I guess the thing, if I knew it was coming from a source which had my best interest and it was only about my information, it would have been slow down and let go. Um, Slow down being because I was in such a panic all the time, my brain would be firefighting all day. And then when I got home at night, mentally and physically, I was drained. So I wasn't there emotionally, spiritually for anyone in my house because it was just a constant battle all the time. So therefore, no one got the best of me. Not even I got the
Mhm.
best of me. So slowing down, as in let go. What's meant to happen will happen. You fighting and holding, all you're doing is you're killing yourself and you're draining yourself. So have faith and have trust that the universe will provide. The universe will guide you the way it needs to guide you, but just let go. Be the best you can within your home and within your workspace, and whatever's meant to be will be. And know that there's too many good people around you that even if everything failed, you'll still be okay. But your young ones and your family, the people that are most important to you, are the ones that need you to be the best version of yourself. And right now, you're not being that. And and I guess that would have made sense to me. But even though I was very fearful and very panicked, I was panicked at that moment for years. I panicked because the financial burden was on me. I was this, my wife had left work. We chose that, so that one parent's at home, and I just felt that we made that decision. I now have to burden that decision. When I didn't really need to, it was just something I put on myself because I saw my dad do that. So my dad was an entrepreneur as well, and he was the sole breadwinner of our house. So it was me, my sister, my brother, my mum, my dad, and his parents. So there's seven of us that lived together. He was the only one who worked, and he took that burden on himself because that's what he chose, and that's what I saw. And I didn't realize that till recently that I was just almost replicating his journey through what I
Mhm.
was doing when I could have made a choice at any time to say, I don't want to do that.
I love that. I was writing down one of my biggest takeaways from what you said was, or not that you said, but this is what I got from it is like being present with your child, like in the sense that, like, again, it's that scarcity, like, oh, I'm here with my kid, but I should be doing this. Like, no, just stay
Yeah.
present with them, because when you think about all those things, you get out of the moment, and that's how you lose. That's how that's the pattern. Those are the breadcrumbs to the trap that lead you to, like, no, I can't do this. I need to spend
Mm.
time somewhere else. I need to go back to work,
Mm.
and you just fall
And,
back to that habit.
and also something to follow on to that is like when you get caught up in that loop, one thing that I ask myself, in 10 years, is it really going to matter? And
Mhm.
that's a really good question to stop yourself to say, actually, me looking at my phone right now, or me going and making that phone call, in 10 years, is it really going to matter? And what's really going to matter is your child at 10 years old, if they were just newborn. That's what's really going to matter, not that email or that phone call or that conversation you need to have. That can happen at any time. But your child at 10 years old is probably going to be the most important thing at that moment. So keep nurturing that.
Mm, I love that. And just to jump off of that, because that touches with something that came to me a few years ago. It was this place that I was working. I was putting so much time in. I was putting like overtime. I was putting working on the weekend, sometimes for free. And it was like, no, actually, it was just working on the weekends for free. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, yeah, I understand I'm loyal and I love the work, and then like there's this scarcity of like losing it. But I'm like, in 100 years, is this business going to be here? Like, probably not. Most businesses are not. So it's like, is this worth all of my energy right now for something that's not going to last? And that's where it shifted for me. Like, okay, like it shifted everything. with regards to the work that I wanted to be doing, but the people I wanted to spend time with and my non-negotiables. And thank you for saying that. It brought that back to me. And one thing I wanted to ask was, you mentioned your dad.
Hmm.
So what was that like growing up with your dad? Just again, he was taking care of, what was it, 7 people in the house?
Yeah.
He was the sole breadwinner. Like what did that mean to you? Or what was your experience growing up with your dad?
Right. So in terms of financially, or if you say in terms of our upbringing, we never wanted for anything. We had a really blessed upbringing in terms of, we never got everything we wanted, but the things we needed, they were provided. So if we wanted a £100 Ralph Lauren jumper, he would say, no, a £5 one is fine from the supermarket. But if we needed a car because we needed to get from A to B, he'd say, okay, yeah, we'll get that. So there was always that where you spent money on the things you needed, not the things that were just nice to have. So we got a lot of, lessons in that way from that. And also, my dad's always been a positive character. So he's always been, like he, set up his first business with a friend, and he bought him out, and we moved to a different city. Then he sold that business and bought another business and set up a new one through no knowledge or skills. He just decided he wanted to do it. So I know where I've got that energy from. But one thing I always felt, so in terms of our life, we had a good life. I've no doubt. There's nothing I can look back and think that was tough. If we look at materially, we never had all the biggest and best things, but we had love. We had love. We had food on the table. We never wanted for anything. It's like when we used to say, "Oh, we want to go and get a job," my dad would always say, "No, don't get a job. Wait till you finish studying, and when you finish studying, you're going to be working all your life anyway. So let me look after you until you finish, and then you can go on." Things like that would be always reiterated. We just had to make sure we studied and we got good grades at school. That was, being from an Asian parent family, education was really important. So that they pushed us on that. But one thing was, because so I have an older sister, I'm middle, and I have a younger brother. There's 2 years between us all, so it's two. So we're quite close. Now, when we studied, I generally took things in very quickly, understood them, and then replicated in school. So generally, I was a very disruptive child in the class because I got things quickly and then I just finished and then had nothing else to do. So I was seen as a disruptive student, whereas my sister and my brother were very studious because they had to think and work really hard to take things in. So when it was time for exams, they'd revise for days and days. I'd revise for 2 hours and I'd be done. So there'd be an effortless way of, taking information in. For my dad, that meant that I wasn't trying. I think he saw a potential in me that I didn't see in myself. And all he could say to me is, so my sister used to come say if she got a grade C, and my brother got a grade C, then he'd say, well done, you got your pass, that's good. I come home with a grade A, he goes, okay, what was your mark? I'd be 85. He'd be like, so where's the other 15 gone? And it was constantly not good enough. And that's what I kept hearing, it's not good enough. So what you're doing is not good enough. There's never a time where you'd say, well done, congratulations, you got all this. No, what is it that you got? Where did you miss out? What did you, And I kept seeing that as, you're not good enough. You're just not good. No matter what you do, I kept hearing my sister and my brother get way below me, but that's good. Well done. But for me, where did you lose out? Where did you miss out? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And up until so I did my education, did my degree, finished that, still the same. Did my master's, finished that. Again, it was a case of, well, I knew you could do it, so what's the point me sort of congratulating you? You're capable of doing that. And it was only when I started working for 6 months and I organized a conference. So it's like a 5,000 person conference, and I gave a keynote speak, and I organized it, and he came along to see what was going on. And that was the first time. This was when I was 22 years old. He came along and he saw that and he says, wow, I'm quite impressed that you did all that. So you organized this, you gave your speech, and he goes, I'm proud. And that's the first time in my life I'd ever heard those words, either you did well, I'm proud, anything like that. And that's shut that door. Because up until that point, I didn't realize that even though he was saying, um, I, you know, I would almost dismiss it all the time. I was still trying to please him somehow, still
Mm,
trying. And when he kept saying, "You're not good enough," I kept hearing, "Okay, you just need to keep trying. You're not worthy. You're not worthy. You're not worthy. You're not worthy." So when he said that, it was almost like that door shut. I have nothing to prove to you now. I've proven myself, and it's almost like it let go of some anchors that have been holding me down, and then it almost felt like I'm ready to live my life. Because up until that point, I felt like I was living just to please him, to get those words to come out of his mouth. Um, and when that happened, the funny thing was that then it was a case of I'm just going to do what I want to do now because I have nothing to prove to anyone. And
mm,
then it was funny because our relationship changed as well. Because I wasn't seeking approval, I didn't really care what he thought or anyone thought. And therefore, when he did try and give me advice or maybe support me, I was like, well, I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it. And it almost became a switch where he was seeking me now. Because I was walking away, he was almost chasing me, saying, "Do you need any help with anything? I'll help you, I'll do this, I'll do this." And it got to a point where it's only probably the last 5 years where we become like best friends.
mm,
Because we're now grown adults. We know he comes along and helps me when I've got stuff in the house. I'll go down his and help him. And we reach a
mm.
really good relationship where we're friends. But it's taken 40 years of my life to get there. And maybe I don't know if that was my own viewpoint of how I saw things, but that's the trajectory.
It's so cool to like, and thank you so much for sharing all of that, because it's what I've learned and understood is like the circumstance is the circumstance.
Yeah,
It just is.
yeah.
And our best intentions can also create the worst results. So like, again, I don't know your dad, and just me putting myself in his shoes, I'm like, huh, I can totally see how I can see my kid. I'm like, yeah, like this is easy for you. I value like you pushing yourself and you creating great things. Look at what you created by not trying. Look at what you could create when you do try,
Mm,
or imagine what you can when you do try. And then it's like, it's almost again like, what's the meaning he's probably attaching to that? And I'm like, oh, maybe it's he got this. That must mean he didn't try.
yeah, yeah.
So crazy. I mean,
And
it's just
in
enough.
theory, if you put yourself now in that shoes, so you have say you have a
Mhm.
7-year-old child, for example, or a 10-year-old right now, and you feel that he doesn't try to his ability, and the outcomes
Mhm.
would be so much better if he actually just put some effort in. How do you think you would deal with that in theory?
So to me, it's different. So like that's also the purpose for this podcast is for me to learn and like all right, these are the things I would be inclined to do. Like, oh, listening to this and my own experiences and other people I've coached is like, okay, I have their experience too. So for me, initially, without knowing anything, I'm like, I would probably do the same thing. I was like, dude, this is you can do so much better, and I want you to do it. And me not showing you the praise, that should be motivation to that. That's like that's one inclination of thinking. Knowing what I know is like, okay, like I understand that is like, let's not forget to tell him that I am proud of him. Like I love you. You are so smart. You're amazing. I know you tried. Like the one thing is like, especially like a kid, when an adult talks to them, it's almost like sometimes the adult is they talk in the way that I know, and because I'm an adult, I know what's right. And it's like it's almost like if I was in that perspective, you don't know if I tried or not. Like now you're calling me a liar. Now you don't trust me, and it's like if like you don't know what I tried. Just because you think I'm smart doesn't mean this was easy. And it's like let me fill his tank up with love, or let me fill his love tank up so he's not feeling like there's a void, or needing to like I am proud of you and I do love you. And let me ask him like, is this something you want? Like, did you try your best? Like, okay, cool. And even if you didn't, like, let's find out, like, why not? Like, was this
Mm,
just not interesting to you? Like, hey, you know what? To be honest, I'm not going to try really hard on the things I'm not interested in either. So it's like, how
is
can
it?
I lead him in that way? At least from what I know now, based off what everything
Well,
I've learned
it's
so far.
interesting after talk to Kay. So Kay was saying, and for the listeners, Kay is a mutual friend of ours.
So if you're listening to this podcast, at one of these episodes, I interviewed Kay's husband. I met Kay and Bhavik from the same seminar.
Okay, so yeah.
Yes.
So Kay said something really interesting to me because obviously she's worked with a lot of young people, over her life. And she said to me, for her to let go of that, where we put our thoughts and our thought of their potential out of the window and say, whatever it is you want to do, whichever way you want to do, you just do it your way, and I'll love you anyway, right? She goes, when I realized that, the risk she felt she was taking was, will I kick myself in the future for not pushing them? And she is, now looking back, it was the best thing I did because they figured their own way out anyway, whatever that looked like, And why is it that we put our views onto them to say, we believe you can do better? Why is it important that we do that as parents in our eyes? Is it because we want them to achieve what we believe their potential is? Or is it that we see that if we don't do it, they're not going to go down that path to be the best version of themselves? And that's one that I think I struggle with even now, every day, in terms of, if I feel, coming from an Indian background, Asian background, there's always been this thing about the parents pushing the kids, universally Asian, whether it be Indian, whether it be, Korean, Japanese, all of this Asian culture is the parents push the kids educationally and in careers to be the best they can. Now, I don't know what the right answer or the wrong answer is. I don't know. I think it depends on the child, how they receive your words. But the thing I struggle with most is where if I don't show that I care by saying, okay, focus on what they're doing and how they're doing it, does that show to them that I don't really care? And if I don't care, I'm just going to live the way I want to live. And if then I don't want them to turn around in the future, say, well, you never cared anyway, so why are you bothered what I do with my life now? And that, I don't want that conversation either. So therefore, at what point do we say there's that nudging and saying, we're behind you, whatever you need, and that motivation where you say, actually, I think you can do more. What do you need? Do you need help and support to make that happen? Or do we say, just figure it out yourself? And where's the love in that? Because that's a bit that I think I struggle with, again, daily, to say, at what point do I hands off and what point do I put my hands on? I don't know. And I think it's figuring both of them out individually.
That's why this stuff is like, it's like a dance. It's such a skill. Like, there's a reason why no one, like, it's not taught how to be a dad, and because it's like, what point do you start? And I think, like, I'm of the belief that we are all more similar than we are different. Like, I feel a strong connection with you. You and I have never even met in person. You're across the pond in the UK. But just like I believe people are more similar than they are different, I also think there's a similarity in experiences. So like, if we were to kind of like boil some of this idea down too, it's like, look, I have an expectation of my child. I expect them to do more, and it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of like, I want the best for them. And again, we're emotional people. We justify our emotions through logic. And it's like, let me think about that one person who was raised with this way, and like, now he's a bum, or now he's like, he's going job to job, or he's not, or again, cultural standards, he's not married, or he's this, or he's single. He's like, I wouldn't be proud of that person. It's like, again, I expect something from my child. But then again, a lot of situations are kind of similar. Who likes anything being expected of them? Like, it's just such a burden. It's such a thing. It's like, why don't you just trust that I can do what's best? Or it's kind of like again, like, we have expectations of how people act, like what people should do in society. Like you should be on time for something, or you should be doing this. And it's like when that's not met, we get upset. And it's like, oh, wait, what was the reason behind that? I was like, oh, this guy had COVID, or this guy had a ticket. That's why he's late, or that's why he didn't show up, or that's
Yeah.
why or like his car broke down, or some emergency happens. Like, yeah, of course, yeah, that's why. Like, okay,
Mm.
like our expectations can create kind of like chains.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
I'm curious, what is let's go to that question of what are things that your dad, your mom, even both your parents did growing up that you want to do the same, or that you have been doing the same with your kids?
Wow. Okay. One thing is to have an environment which is supported and loving all the time. Now, my parents never openly said they loved us, but it was shown in their actions of caring for us and being there. You know, within an Asian community, my generation, so my parents' generation, there's very little affection shown in terms of hugs and kisses and outward expressions of "I love you" or "I care for you." It was all almost, first of all, expected. You just know. I don't need to say it. And
Mm,
secondly, is by our actions. You know, you have food on the table, you have clothes on your back, you have, you know, we take you places. So it was shown by actions, it wasn't shown by words. So I guess that is important to make sure that our environment that we grow up is in safe and it's a loving environment. But I think the other thing I think I really with both my mom and my dad was that they always they always try to give us what we want, but not everything that we asked for. So always there was always a strive, always a wanting. You know, I'd like this. I want a new computer. I want a new TV. But it's a case of actually, we can get them. Just wait. There's an element of patience. You know, build patience in. Things will come. You just have to let them come in their own time. And if you ask both my kids, and they hate me for this, but you know, hopefully they're learning something. It's like whenever they ask me for something, it's a case of actually, yeah, we'll get that when you're 25 years old. We'll buy that, no problem. And my son
mm.
hates. He's like, we need a new iPad. I said, yeah, yeah, don't worry. When you're 19 and you have a job, you can buy your own, no problem. So it's like, you know, that element of just build those things in. My parents also gave us this thing about saving. You know, putting some money aside for, you know, rainy days and things like that. And I guess that's helped a lot as we got older. My dad used to always say, if you don't have the
Mm,
money in your pocket, don't spend it.
mm,
And you know, if people heard that, we wouldn't have the huge debt culture that we
yeah.
seem to live in these days. So I guess those kind of things were really important. And one another really important that started from my granddad actually, and that came through, filtered through to my parents, to us, was the importance of family. Family, because my dad and my mom both come from a big family. So my dad has four brothers, two sisters. My mom has three brothers, three sisters. So, and then all the cousins underneath that. So when we talk about family, I don't just talk about my mom, dad, my dad, brother and sister. I talk about all my cousins, my uncles. We were raised by everyone. I wasn't raised by just them. I was raised by the whole family. Now, one thing they always said is that family, you know, irrespective of what happens, family will always be there as a foundation. We have to be
Mhm,
there, love each other, support each other, and things will always be all right. And as part of that, any birthday, so anyone whose birthday that lives in a local community, that lives in my home city, everyone goes to their house for their birthday. So, for example, if my auntie's birthday on Wednesday, she's having it on Saturday, and everyone will go around, they'll cook food, and everyone will come. And when we say everyone, there's like 30, 40, 50 people that will come. And it's not like an invite, it's not like she'll say, come. It's because it's your birthday, you come. You know, and my granddad started that. He says, if we can't make time for each other on these special occasions, then you know we're just going to lose this thing called family. And what's really great is that we've held that tradition. So now even my kids, look forward to those family birthdays where we all get together, we have a bit of food, we all talk, and just get to see each other, once, twice, three times a month, every month for the whole time. And then, and that's how, as a family, we're still a really, really strong unit from
Mm.
the oldest, who's my dad, down to the youngest, who are like newborns. It's something that we've just sustained and maintained, and that's been really, really important for us to continue as well.
I love the way you just said. I just wrote it down real quick. If we don't come make time for each other, we lose our family.
Yeah.
So huge. Oh man, that huge distinction for me.
Mm.
And well, you mentioned some stuff with your dad, but I'm curious, what would you do differently, or what are you doing differently that is different from how your parents raised you and your siblings?
So I think two of the most important things is the outward expressions of love. So the hugs, the kisses, the I love yous, all of these expressions I think are so important. I really think, for me, I just really enjoy making sure my kids know that no matter what, everything will always be okay, irrespective. And, they're always going to be loved by their dad. Doesn't matter. You can bring anything to the table and that won't change that. So that is important. And like I say, it's not just shown by actions, but it's shown by words and expressions like that. And I think the other thing is not putting a heavy expectation on them. Not, saying, I expect this, I expect that. A case of, do you know what it is? Whatever it is, it's fine. You'll figure it out. Don't worry. If you need my help and support, I'll be there. But I don't want to say, you need to get this, or you need to do this, or you have to do it this way. It's like I have my own business. I don't want either of my kids to join my business if I still have at that point. I want them
Mhm.
to figure out their own routes. Do it your way. Don't do it my way. Don't follow me. Do it your way.
I love that. And I'm curious, if you could go back in time with both your kids, what would you do the same?
As in it from
Like raising
what
them.
we've done
Like what would
up
you
to this
do if
point.
you could go back in time? What would you do the same raising
What would I do the same? Did you say?
them? Hmm.
Um, I guess what we did in terms of building our home with love, I wouldn't change that at all. Being around family, so being near my parents, we moved especially to be near them. My kids have a special bond with their grandparents, who are my parents,
Mm.
because I had a special bond with my grandparents, who are my dad's parent, dad's mum and dad. So again, would not change that for the world. And I guess just trying to be the most open dad I can, in terms of nothing will surprise me. No matter what you bring to the table, it's not going to surprise me. And I won't change that either. Just continue to have an open table where we can sit and talk about anything.
Mm. If you were to go back in time, same thing, what would you do differently with each of them?
Yeah, so 100% the time spent with them when they were younger,
Mhm.
I would see the importance of those years, the first 10 years of their life, and try to be more available and not be so wrapped up in my businesses to build that foundation, because I know life will always be okay. But spending more time with them and raising them in a way where I have a little bit more, I guess, not influence, but more energy that I put into them, where they feel that dad was there. Dad's been there for me no matter what. And I think somehow I feel like I've not been, but right now I'm trying to change that, trying to pull that in by my actions that I live now. I can't rewind time, but I can definitely learn from what I see of where I've maybe would do it differently.
And this came to mind as you were talking about this, about the business stuff. Like, do you think your business would be radically different, or at least the money that you were making would have been radically different if you were spending time with your kids in those first 5, 10 years? Like if you
Um,
created the change that you wanted to.
So yeah, so if I now understand that the universe would have provided irrespective. And I can see that if our circumstances, financially, materially, if we look at those things, because that's an easy way to express it, I know we would have been probably equal to, if not even better, than if I had let go and let God, as I say, let go and let God and let the universe guide my path, because it may have led me down a different path. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that we would have always been okay, because I've never been. I'm not. Both me and my wife, we're not extravagant people. We're always going to be all right. Give us a little bit of food, give us a bit of shelter. My parents are there. Even if everything falls up, we're moving there, we'd be fine. So there's never been that attachment to the big cars, the big house, all those things. It's always been a case of actually, you know, let's live as simply as we can, and life will always be good. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and the reason I asked that is again not for hindsight purposes, but it's for the man who's right now listening to this, and he's like, wow, like, do I want, like, can I do that?
Yeah.
Maybe at this point he's like, can I actually do that? Spend more time. I want to spend more time, but this is so important, or I have these goals, and I think it's so huge what you said. Like, look, like, and this kind of goes for anybody. This is why, again, like what you mentioned about finances, like learn about finances more, like what you actually need in a month. It's probably not as much as you think.
Mm.
And like if you just focus on, not just focus on that, but like go for your goals, but like again, there's always balance. What are your goals with your family? What are your goals with
Yeah.
your kids? What are the memories you want to have? Like you'll find that you can actually do both much easier than you think.
Mm.
So cool. And my question to you is, for the dad who's not home, for the dad who maybe he lives in another country, maybe he lives in another state, maybe he what is it called, he sees his kid every other weekend, or he no, maybe he just hasn't been around and he wants to repair that relationship with his kid. Like, what is some advice that you have for that dad?
Wow. So first of all, there's always time. You just have to decide. You have to choose. Just because life has led you down this path, and there's it's not ideal in terms of maybe you do want to see your child more, you do want to see your kid more, but circumstances have not been that way, or some of the decisions you've made, some of the knowledge you've had to make those decisions not been great, and it's led you to this point. That can change at any time, and you just have to decide that actually now what's important to me. So if it is that you want to see your child more, you want to spend more time or do something, you just have to make it work. It might be hard. There may be a lot of barriers and hurdles on your way. Maybe an ex-partner, maybe you're not together, maybe or other people, family members that are saying you're not worthy, you don't. But the bottom line is you just choose, and if you choose and you choose with love, then you'll always find a way. And if great question that someone said to me is that if you don't know what to do, ask the question, what would love do? And that answer is usually the correct one. And what you'll find is that things will move out of the way and open your path. I believe if you put the right energy in, if you're doing it for the right reasons, your intention is pure, and you really want to just build that relationship with your child, nothing can stop you if you just say, I'm making a commitment to do that. So yeah, I would say that, and just don't be put off. There'll be hurdles, there'll be obstacles, there'll be things that will stop you. Just keep going, just keep going. Because if you could fast forward yourself in 20 years, if you make the little steps and you keep moving in that direction, how great life would be in 20 years time, or 10 years time, or 15 years time, and put that kind of timeline on it, because things will take time, depending how much repairing needs to be done. But that things may take a lot of time. Just give yourself that time to do that.
For the dad who's running a business, maybe he's a CEO, maybe he's at a job that just requires so much time, or he's putting so much time, he's putting so much time in his business and he's not as home as often.
Hmm.
What is some advice that you have for him?
Remember, that's a choice you're making. No one's making you. No one can make you do anything. You choose to do that. And as soon as you understand that, you can choose any time to make that change. Now, someone may say, "Oh, I have to." No one has to do anything. It's always a choice you're making. Once you take that responsibility on yourself to say, "This is a choice I'm making. I'm staying late. I'm working these hours. I'm building this. Whatever I'm doing, I'm making that choice. I'm doing that at the sacrifice of the relationship with my children." Once you see it like that, then it's the case of actually, if I want that to change, I know what I have to do to make that change. And as soon as you say, I am making that commitment to make that change, it can happen when you realize it's your choice. Everything that's got you to the point you've got now has been your choice. If you want to move forward in a different way, you just have to choose again. There's no point looking backwards. Look forwards and say, what do I want my life to be in a year's time, 2 years' time, and work back. What are the choices you need to make now to make that happen? So if that's spending more time at home, maybe changing career, maybe doing something that you know is going to be good for the relationship for you and your children, they're the steps you need to start making. I'm not saying it happens overnight, but if you keep that focus to say that's the end result, anything is possible.
For the dad who's just new, maybe he's expecting, maybe he's a few weeks in, maybe a few months in, what is some advice that you have for him?
Smile. Smile, because first of all, always the way I've always seen things is that there's so many people that would love to be in your shoes. You know, there's so many people. I have friends that have tried for children for so many years, and then when they one, the universe blesses them with one, or they may not bless them at all. Whichever way you see it. Just remember that if you're on those early stages, first of all, there's such a long way to go, and there's so many things that are going to happen that you're going to be like, wow, this is just an amazing journey. But always look at he or she, the child you have, and always feel blessed that the universe has given you the responsibility to look after this life. And also, the universe would not only trust the people that can handle that role. And only if you're strong enough, if you feel that this is hard and there's a lot going, because that's another way you see it. There's the positive and the negative. Negative could be, this is hard, I can't handle it. The universe wouldn't given you that challenge if it didn't think you could handle it. And I believe that strongly.
And this part is not for me. This is not for any of the dads listening to this or anyone else. This is for two specific people. What is something that you would like to tell each of your kids?
For my daughter, I would, I would just openly say that you are loved. Do not take the information and the outside environment sometimes where you find it difficult to process what's going on and what you should be and how you should look and what you should wear and those things. Just know that you're beautiful inside. I know that because you come from love. And if you just hold that ground where you may feel that you're the odd one out, you may feel that actually no one gets me. But it doesn't matter, because the people that do get you and the people that will be close to you, they'll come. So just trust yourself with that. And my son, I would say, just keep being you, because you're a crazy animal and no one really understands how you think. And that comes from your dad, and your dad never listened to anyone, and he's been all right. So just keep doing it that way. And I see a mirror of myself every day in him. He challenges me every day because he questions everything. And I wasn't like that when I was young. I've been like that when I'm older, and I'm thinking, where did that come from? And it's come directly from me. And I want his whole life to be like that. Never just settle. Just keep asking. And like I said, irrespective of whatever happens, the outcome, your dad and mom will always here for you, no matter what. And that's unequivocally, we are always here, irrespective of what either of you choose to do with your lives.
I love it, man. Bhavik, thank you so much for your time, so much for your your wisdom, your knowledge, and I look forward to seeing what comes next out of this, man.
100%. And thank you so much. Thank you for anyone who's listening. And Andres, thank you for starting this because I think it's such a important conversation that all men need to have. And unless we have these conversations, some things we just are things that are unsaid. We just assume that people know, but they don't. And it's so in this context, for example, I think it's so important that we share our thoughts, our feelings, because one little insight, even one little bit that you can take away, and it helps you, it's been worth us sitting here for the last hour talking.
Love, man. Thank you.
No, it's not. Thanks so much.